Alright, so we finished with fungi, and now we're going to move on to the next kingdom, which of course is going to be the plant kingdom. I know some people are like, plants are boring. Actually, plants are one of my favorite organisms because they are fascinating, and I'm going to prove you wrong that plants are boring. Alright, we are going to be looking at vascular plants, not non-vascular plants. So there's two major types. Non-vascular versus vascular. So we are looking at, when I say non-vascular, I'm talking about mosses, ferns, okay, and like things like liverworts. They're cool in their own way. They have their own kind of beauty. I really appreciate a forest that's completely covered with moss on the northern side of a mountain, or ferns, okay? But they need water to survive. They need water to finish their life cycle. And they don't have a very organized vein network that allows sugar and water to travel up their stems. So they don't get tall. They kind of spread out instead. But with vascular plants, which is most of the majority of plants on our planet, okay, we can get things like redwoods and sequoias that are hundreds of feet tall because they have a vascular organized vein system inside of them to travel sugars and water up the stem, okay? Now vascular, we're going to divide it again into two groups: monocots versus dicots. Okay, monocots and dicots. Cots, short for cotyledon. Cotyledon is simply the baby leaf that is inside of the seed itself. So when I say monocots, we're actually going to do a good old-fashioned corn kernel. Okay. Versus dicots, we're going to do a good old-fashioned bean. Bean in a wet paper towel, and you put it in the cup, and you put it at the window, and it grows a little thing. Okay, so I got a bean. Okay, so these are two really good examples of monocots. Mono meaning one, di meaning two. So when the seed sprouts, it's easy to tell. Monocots only have one leaf, and of course they have the roots coming out. Okay, where dicots sprout two leaves, and of course have the roots. Okay, monocots and dicots. Monocots are things like grasses, grains, bulbs like tulips, daffodils, spiderwort. Those are all monocots, okay? They kind of have a leaf inside a leaf inside a leaf inside a leaf. I don't know if you've ever been bored at soccer practice and actually taken apart a blade of grass because you're listening to coach, kind of. But, you notice that they're telescoping, that there's a leaf inside a leaf inside a leaf inside a leaf until you get to the end and there's no more leaf. Okay, with dicots, though, we get all sorts of wildflowers, okay, trees, all sorts of trees. Okay, so pretty much just the majority of plants are dicots. And that's because grasses, and monocots also have palms. Okay, they just don't grow very big. There's only so much room for diversity with them, whereas there's a lot of room for diversity with monocots, with dicots, excuse me. So anything that grows and has two leaves that open up, okay, as they come out of the seed. So what we're going to be looking at, and we'll talk a little bit more about how plants defend themselves next time. And not only that, how plants have locomotion, because yes, plants can move, and plants have different ways of dispersing their seeds, which are very fascinating. We are going to be looking at simply the anatomy of a dicot flower, okay? Actually, I take that back. Monocots have a very simplified kind of flower, usually in multiples of 3, okay, when it comes to the chambers of the ovary, or how many stamens they have, or definitely how many petals they have. Always a multiple of 3, usually. If you look at a daffodil, you will notice around the cup it has 6 petals. If you look at a spiderwort flower, you'll notice it has 3 petals. If you cut open the ovary of a lily, you'll notice there are usually 3 or 6 chambers inside of it to hold the seeds. So we'll go with a breakdown of what a monocot flower looks like on the inside. So this is what's going to be called a cross section, okay? And we're going to start with kind of a very long candle looking thing. Okay. And this candle looking thing is going to have a cute little hat. And inside of this, you know, it looks like a really long chicken leg now that I look at it. It's a really long chicken leg, people. Okay, really long drumstick. Okay, you're going to draw inside the main part of your drumstick. Have a kind of on one side and on the other side. Okay, to form the ovary with its different chambers and what we see as the seeds developing on the inside. Okay, now you're going to give your drumstick long tail fibers and make them a little more chunky. And you're going to also put hats on the top of those. So when we talked about parasites, we talked about hermaphrodites. And in this case, it was animals that had both male and female parts, okay? If they had no one to do the hokey pokey with, they could do the hokey pokey with themselves and just create copies of themselves asexually. Alright, with flower parts, okay, a lot of flowers are also hermaphrodites. They have male and female parts together. Now, a lot of them don't like to pollinate themselves, okay, because that leads to weakened genetic codes. Instead, they want to cross-pollinate, which we rely on. I hope someone said bees in that pause. Okay, bees and other pollinators. We rely on bees and other pollinators to help cross-pollinate a lot of our crop flowers that we have, things like that. Alright, go ahead and we're going to give some more of these because there's usually more. Okay. We're going to have that, and then we're going to have kind of a cute little fountain down here. And then we're going to have the petals. And the petals are all behind this, so you can go wee. Okay, so we have these big, beautiful petals. Okay, now to label this. Okay. So, we have a sticky part up here. Sticky as a stigma. Okay. Stigma is sticky so it can receive pollen. Pollen will stick up here, and that tiny little piece of pollen will actually form a pollen tube to go down into the ovary and connect with one of the seeds so the seed can be fertilized. That's how pollination actually works. It is on top of what is called the style, because women have style. Thank you very much. Okay, so these are the two female parts of the flower. So stigma, sorry, women got stigma, and also we also have style. So men, okay, men. You have the long stem part that is called the stay. Oh, look, it actually has the word men in it. Stamen. That's easy to remember. So stamen. And then this part, this is just the structural part to actually hold up what has the actual pollen on it. On the actual pollen is what's called the anther. Not antler, anther. Okay. So the anther is going to have the pollen part. Kind of like how male deer have antlers, kind of remember it that way. Male deer have antlers and flowers have anthers. Okay. Down here we've got the seeds. Okay, those are the ones that are inside. Okay. And this bulbous part is called, okay, the ovary. Now that's all great. Really, when the flower just kind of gets whittled down, that's the very important parts. Then we have kind of the accessories of the flower. Okay. We of course have the petals. Okay, that we have put there. Now the petals don't help in active reproduction. Okay, they don't help the ovary make seeds. They don't help the anthers at all, except they do, underneath the bee's eye, act as a giant bullseye to let the bee know there's pollen here, there's nectar here that collects at the bottom of the flower. Come get it. So bees can see in a larger amount of light spectacle than we can. They can see not only in visible light, which is the kind of light we can see, but they can also see in fluorescence, which means that all these petals glow like neon lights to them. They are literally big neon signs saying, food here, pollinate here. Okay, so the petals help bring in the pollinators. Petals all together form what's called the corona, or crown of the flower. Okay, so the corona, it's, well, I mean, it's a ring of petals. It's literally a crown to go around the flower. Then we have some defensive parts. Okay, and that's what these guys down here are. The sepal. Okay, so sepals are kind of like, they look like green coverings or green leaves that are right at the base of the flower. They actually act as shields, because if you have Mr. Caterpillar coming up and it really wants to eat all this delicious stuff up here, what the sepals are going to do, are they going to stop it. And sepals are usually have spines on them, irritating hairs. Some sepals contain certain poisons that tell caterpillars, go away. You're not welcome here. You're not going to eat this flower. So sepals are kind of like the shields of the flower. And then you have what's called the pedicule. Pedicel, excuse me. I knew I was going to do something like that. Pedicel. It simply means the foot of the flower. Pedi meaning foot, okay, of the flower. And this is just the link to the main stem that goes to the main part of the plant. So that is the basic breakdown of the anatomy of a flower, okay? And we will talk more about the cross section of stems, leaves, how they go next time when it comes to flowers. But what I want you to do for now is you're going to get a piece of watercolor paper. Now you might have seen these out in the hallway last semester, but what the students did is some of them made them as big as my thumb. Okay, they had this huge piece of paper and they made it as big as my bean. And I'm like, why is your flower as big as my thumb when you have this whole piece of paper to work with? No, I want you to redraw this diagram, okay, with correct labels. Again, big on your watercolor piece of paper. You're going to trace it with thin permanent markers, and then you're going to watercolor it with didactic coloring. Now please, someone raise their hand and tell Miss Robin, what is didactic coloring? Someone better said coloring that teaches things, because each part should be differently colored to show the difference between them. So please make sure that your flower is didactically colored. Does that mean you can use all sorts of yellows and greens and oranges to do the middle part and then a pretty color for the petals? Sure, as long as it's obvious that they are different colors, please. Please. Alright. And that is going to be your first thing for plants. And we will talk more about deadly poisons next time. Bye.